Welcome to Creating Success in the Mess, where we talk about just that, creating success in the mess of this thing we call life.
We're your hosts, Corey and Whitney, a husband and wife team that does life and business together.
In this podcast, we share our struggles and funny moments as we have journeyed growing our family, our faith, and businesses.
We share inspiration, motivation, and practical tips and tricks to help you build yourself and a life you love.
We invite you to join us every week on the podcast, and we can't wait to create success in the mess together.
Hey there, and welcome to today's episode. I'm Corey.
And I'm Whitney.
And of course, you know who we are. We're the husband and wife duo team. We're entrepreneurs. We're parents. We're a lot of things. We do a lot of things. And we're super happy that you're here listening to our podcast. And today we're going to talk about something that came up on the telephone when I was like miles away on a business venture. Whitney had called me and she was like, you know what? She does this every so often. Husbands out there, if you got a wife that just calls you and like you can just tell by the way you answer the phone and their response back to when you answer, you're like, oh man, what's this gonna be? But I answer this phone, I'm like, hey, I'm like literally getting ready to like cut into some chicken fried steak, folks. And I'm like, I'm gonna have to wait on the gravy. My wife has something to say. But she said, I was thinking, it's kinda irritating me. And I'm like, what's irritating? She goes, you know, when people said about, you know, you're spoon fed. And I'm like, whoa, what are you talking about? And she's like, you don't remember what I'm talking about? I'm like, no. She goes, we were just talking about this like an hour ago when I had called you. And I'm like, I just drove through the mountains. I don't remember anything. I was like, I need some context. She goes, you know what? Never mind. Just never mind. I'm not going to talk to you about this. I'm like, no, hold on. Just give me some context and fill me in. And she says, well, you know, they said like, you learned that from me. I was like, I learned what from you? I'm still lost, right? And like, what were you thinking when I kept saying like, what do you mean learn what? What did I learn from you? I said I learned something from you?
Yeah, then I was like, okay, you know what? Like, maybe I was just hypersensitive because so many times in my life, I have been, you know, I don't know why. I really have no idea. And to be honest with you, every time it happens, it makes me really irritated. Like, I mean, it can like, when they say like your blood starts boiling. Yeah. Like, that's how it is.
Oh,
like,
you're irritable.
I feel like it gets, like, that is like something that just sets me off. And so today, we had this conversation about, you know, this conversation, and yet again, it was portrayed in the sense of, like, I was, you know, I know better, I was taught better, I, you know, was given the information, like, you know, I was silver spoon fed, whatever.
Yeah, I was told by someone else that I learned something from Whitney. But the reason why I learned it is because she had a different upbringing, and her upbringing is what taught her how to do things like in a very excelling business matter. And I had told Whitney this person had said this, and at the time I didn't even think about like, whoa, bro, Whitney grew up in the same slumback hood like as I did. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, she wasn't spoon fed anything.
So when you told me this, you were believing it. You were believing that I mean, was like, yeah. And so the more I sat there, the more I thought about it, I was like, what the actual heck?
You didn't say heck.
No, but for podcast purposes.
We're keeping it clean, folks.
Now he's believing the same dang thing that I keep fighting against.
That's a topic in itself right there. Like, why do you believe lies that you know aren't true?
So anyway, I sat there and I really thought about it this time, and I really was digging into why in the world does it make me so irritated and frustrated and mad when I encounter these times when people naturally just assume that I was spoon-fed or I was given, you know, a life of business, or my parents had money, or, you know, I came from a house that was just like this, you know, the picture perfect house. And at first I was like, well, that makes me so mad because I didn't come from a picture perfect house in any sense of the matter. I was not raised in a wealthy home. In fact, my parents, I don't even remember my parents being married. My parents were divorced most of my life. I did not grow up in a house that is considered your normal upbringing.
Yeah.
And then if you want to get to like money, my parents were divorced, and my dad paid his $167 check and not a penny more the entire month. And if he bought me something when I was at his house, it stayed at his house. And then my mom was clearly a single mom, and she was going back to school, then she was working, and she worked hard to make up the difference because, I mean, come on, like, we all know $167, like, okay, back then it maybe would gone farther than it does today, but that ain't going anywhere. Like, that isn't raising a kid.
No.
And so she worked hard, but we struggled. I remember one Christmas, like, we had a Secret Santa dropped off this bag of presents on our front porch because clearly we were signed up for one of those things where like they give gifts to kids. I did not come from a home that was wealthy at all. We had times where we shopped at the Salvation Army for clothes. I was no spoiled child. I didn't have two parents in a home. I didn't have that upbringing in the slightest. And so to think that, like, topics like ROI and profit and loss and wealth, building a business, like, none of that was ever a topic of conversation that I heard in my house, ever. Yeah. Both of my parents worked jobs, and they worked for someone else, and they were good workers. And so what I heard would have been more along the lines of getting in a job and being a good worker. Definitely not like losing your noggin and going off and starting a furniture refinishing business because you want to paint.
That actually sounds irresponsible.
Yes. And so in my house, it would have been like, you go to college, you get a degree, you get a job, and you work your job. Yeah. And you work it hard. And,
I mean, that's kind of what, like, we have kids now. And right. I think, like, what are they seeing? Because we learned a lot just from watching our parents. I think we all do. I mean, we all think about that. But if we saw our parents, like they did, they worked the grind. And in a way, like, seeing that, it was like providing us with like some kind of like a norm of what we were supposed to be when we grew up. That right. You were supposed to kind of get into. I mean, it's a system, but you kind of get in and you find your place and your niche, and then you do your thing. There's not necessarily like that. We weren't in either one of our houses provided with this, like, hey, son, if you got an idea and you got a little bit of money, or you got no money, if you really push and you work hard and you do research and you apply and you take action, you take action, you take action, and you take action, you could really be your own boss. Right. That was never expressed.
No.
We didn't get those talks.
No, not at all. I mean, neither one of us grew up in a home or a house where any of that was anything that we were doing good to have electricity and to get by and to, do our school. Yeah. And that was like how we were raised for, I mean, there was periods of time throughout our childhood where, it was worse than others. But for the most part, regardless, all the way through, there was no silver spoon in my mouth. I mean, I was raised in a broken home, and my dad basically up and abandoned me when I was going into 7th grade. Like, I had no more communication with him. So I didn't even have a male figure in my life at that point. I had a single mom that worked their butt off to try to make money to pay the bills. And, it aggravates me because if they knew those facts, then they definitely would not assume the assumption that they make by looking at me today or where I am today, that I was raised this way. I was gifted this from being, in the family that I was in, or, a family business, or you given it by a silver spoon, or spoiled, or all of these things that I have encountered like throughout my life that I've heard. They would never assume that if they knew the actual,
Right.
And so at first when I was like, why is this bothering me so much before I called you? That's what I was thinking about. I was thinking about all those things. Well, if they knew, X, Y, and Z of the...
Had I knew all this before you called me, it made our conversation a little smoother.
But then all of a sudden I was like, what it is not so much hard times that I had or how I was raised, or it's not so much that like it's a pity party in the sense of like how I was raised or what I didn't have or like any of that makes me irritated. It's really the main point that gets me is that they are making a judgment that I am where I am in being a serial entrepreneur, owning multiple businesses, and helping other people become successful business owners, and able to do the things that I can do and know the things that I know. They look at me now at this place with this information and this knowledge and who I am today, and they make that assumption without context of what all I had to do to get here.
Yeah.
So, like we said, we weren't raised hearing any of those words, or there was no silver spoon handed to us. Like we spent hours and hours and hours figuring this stuff out.
Right. I mean, just in one of our businesses, we have like a business with a website just full of art tutorials, and we literally, like, it was like we had this membership where we every week we had like a new painting, and I remember we would sit and we'd put the kids to bed, and I would get the computer programming going, and I'd get you all set up with video and everything and lighting, and you would start painting, and I'd have the computer ready, and as soon as you were done painting, then we took that phone and we uploaded that video, and then the video editing process started, and then we had to make it. I mean, but we did that for like a year, every week,
right?
And like we had like 52 art tutorials, but we didn't do it in a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday time period. I mean, it was like after 11 p.m. I mean, we put our kids to sleep and like we were up late, and we grinded. And so I totally see like when someone says, "Oh well, I mean, you knew this stuff. This was kind of handed to you. You had it easy." Yes, it kind of gets under your skin,
right? Because it wasn't easy. Like, when we were doing that, we had no idea what to do with the lighting. Like, we had no idea how to set a camera up.
Oh, no.
Like, we had no idea how to video edit or what program or any of that.
Yeah.
We didn't know any of that. We literally researched and learned, and we, found a mentor and a coach and somebody that could guide us, and we paid for that. And then we just started doing, and we figured it out along the way. And like you said, for that one thing, we did for a year. And so if you looked at where we were in the membership a year in, it would have looked like it was easy and it was great, and it was, like we had somebody set it up for us or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of nights of like late nights and like deleted videos and like voiceover because the camera didn't actually catch the recorded audio, or the dogs
are barking. I was thinking the same thing.
The kids were whining. I mean, it wasn't pretty.
It wasn't
at all.
It was a mess.
People look in at that one little screenshot of that little time period that they're looking, and they make assumptions. And that is what just really fires me up.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I feel like we're going to go interview mode here a second.
Sure.
I'm going to interview Whitney because you've said a lot of things, and it's really kind of, I have a lot of questions now.
Yep.
And I'm over here like, I think
well, good, I got answers.
Good. Ladies and gentlemen, Whitney always has answers. Okay, so the first thing you said, this is weird because I know, I'm asking you a question, but I kind of know. But I think it's important for our audience to hear the question and hear the answer. So I think it's one thing to be upset that someone says you were spoon-fed. And we're just using the term spoon-fed. It wasn't technically that way, but that's
Right.
essentially what it is. It's like saying, oh, you're a small business owner, therefore you're rich. Here, please give me a donation. No, it doesn't work that way, people. Just because you own a business doesn't mean you're filthy rich. Come on. Get over that generalization. But it's one thing to put all the work in, right? And you put in a lot of hard work and nights, but you also mentioned you paid for coaching.
Yes.
It's another level. Not only did you work your rear off and you sacrifice time, but you also drop money down on the table. So explain to me, like, how does that, like, because you did invest into a mentor and a coach to help you get to the place, I mean, how does that really apply to the people who just think that you were just given?
So when I first initially started investing into coaches and mentors, it was for the purpose of a specific thing. So like the membership we were just talking about. I was solely interested in having somebody tell me what to do to have a membership. And so at first when I was investing in that, like it did cost me money and it cost me time to learn, but
and action. Don't forget about the action.
Right. Yeah. It was when I shifted from mainly investing into, can you just teach me how to do this real quick and real fast so I can, get to the point X? And I started getting more of the mentor that was focused more on me as a person. And so whenever you get a coach or a mentor and you start working on you as a person, you are growing you, which in turn is going to grow your business. And so when you do that, you dig stuff up. Like you are really doing a lot of hard work in you that makes you like overcome roadblocks and challenges and thought patterns and mindsets that you didn't even know you were carrying with you, which is what actually hurdles you over to make the success and the change and grow your business, because your business is an extension of you.
Right.
And so when people say that, like, it really does bother me, because not only did I spend like time and money, I did a lot of work, of inner work.
Right.
And I grew myself.
What was one mindset that you were probably given in your childhood due to your raising that you really had to overcome in order for you to really get to yourself, to the entrepreneur and the business owner that you are today?
I probably have two that I can say. Money mindset is definitely something that we didn't have money. You had to work hard to get it, and you had to be like a good hard worker, a successful hard worker, and you hoarded it when you got it. So you didn't, like, you put it in an account and you saved it, and you didn't actually like enjoy it or spend it. Like, you saved it. There's a lot of money mindset things that I did, just was handed down, and I really have to work hard on. And it goes back further than just my parents. I mean, my parents were handed money mindset things from their parents. And so, like, this is a whole line of things.
Yeah.
And so for me as an entrepreneur, I can't go into business with that mindset, because you can't have that, like, I need to hoard this, I need to hold this over here, and I need to watch, and I need to cut my budget, and my budget, cut. Like, yes, there's a time and a place for cutting, but if you're always focusing on the negative side of the money, like cutting and rebates and hoarding and, savings account.
Your flyer miles on your credit card.
Yeah, then all your attention is going into that direction. And I don't know about you, but in order for me to have a successful business, I have to focus forward.
Yeah.
And so I pay attention so that I'm not being neglectful and spending money in places that I don't need to be spending money. But I also need to focus forward in growth. And sometimes that costs some money. So when I want to grow forward, I know I need a website. And so that's going to cost me some money out of the gate, because I need that website so I can put my tutorials on there so I can sell it.
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't have that website, then my tutorials aren't on there and I can't sell it. So I'm not actually making money.
Right. Yeah, you need a platform. You need like some logistics. Like UPS can't get the package if they don't have the big brown truck.
Correct.
They got to have the big brown truck.
Right.
Your website's like a big brown truck.
Yeah. And
right.
so
you said two things.
Yep.
In there. I want to kind of make a point for. So, and one's like I feel like one's positive, one's negative.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the positive I heard was hard work. Like you definitely learned like to be a hard worker, right?
Yeah.
Then the other part that you talked about, scarcity mindset.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like you got to do it. Like you're working hard, but it's almost like in a way you were almost like taught to like work hard for little.
Yes.
And with what little you have, you better hold on to it and not
Yep.
let it go, because it won't ever come back.
That's right.
And that's really dangerous as a business owner. So like walk us through like really how did you take the work ethic that is kind of the positive, but then apply that into another positive money mindset. Whitney's looking at me like, what? She's like, give me a better question. Okay, so like the work ethic, so instead of like working hard for little money and then putting it in a savings and just having it like, holding on to it and hoarding it.
Right.
Like how'd you take your work ethic and apply it into something that would like, 5x or 10x your money instead of like hoarding it? I'm not doing a very good job. So, for instance, instead of like working really hard to get to get my money, but then I just hoard it because I'm scared to like spend it because I might lose it. Like you used your money to buy into a website platform because you knew that it could up level you.
Right.
Right. So like with like that, like you had to process in a way like to use your work ethic that you were taught, but you also had to kind of like transition from being more of like a hoarding scarcity to being like, I need to use what money I have to invest into my future.
Correct.
Was that difficult?
Very difficult. It's scary. Because everything inside of me was like, wait a minute, do you remember those times when you had to shop at the Goodwill? Wait a minute, do you remember those times when, you were like, you watched your mom pay for groceries with the, food stamp little things? Wait a minute, if you spend this money, it isn't going to come back. Are you sure this is the best choice of spending the funds? You might need that to pay the electric bill to keep the door open. All those thoughts would keep coming up, and I'd have to tell myself, no, it's going to be okay. We're going to do this, and we're going to make more money back, and we're going to pay the electric bill, and we're going to have some left over.
Yeah.
Because if I didn't tell myself that when those thoughts and fears came up and I just kept it over in the savings account, we would not have grown. Right. We would not have done the scary thing in order to make more money. And so we wouldn't have ended up paying the electric bill and having some left over. We would have ended up just having it in the account so we could pay the electric bill. And that's something that still just carries on today that I still battle with because, it is an ongoing process.
Well, when we were dating in college, it was no different. I mean, we always were looking for the deals to eat, and like we were always like thinking about like trying to save our money. But as we began to grow through that, it did change. But it was definitely a struggle. Mm-hmm. So kind of going back to, someone says, oh, you're spoon fed. So could the issue be with their money mindset when they see someone like you who has success and then you take money and instead of hoarding it in a scarcity mindset, you take it and invest it into things and you spend it into things that it's essentially going to level you up in business. So on the flip side, that individual might say like, oh, well, they clearly haven't ever been poor because if they had, they would be holding on and saving their money, not spending it on leveling their website up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it could very well be a judgment based on the snapshot of what they're seeing in my life that is in front of them right at this moment, mixed with their life and their thoughts and their minds. So, Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, if you talked to me today, or looked at me today, you wouldn't necessarily see any of that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you yourself had, those issues or those thoughts or those whatever, then if the person that is looking has money mindset issues or is struggling to pay the rent or whatever, and they look at somebody that is not at that current moment, then of course their situation at that time is going to influence the way that they are seeing something. So yes, you're absolutely right. I'm sitting here getting like super offended because of the hypothesis, basically, that they're trying to judge me off of
based
this
off of their own background
shot that they see in my life right now, when in reality all of it is solely coming probably from the place of where they're sitting and not actually me at all.
Internally, it's really a compliment because it's really evidence to you that's like, they really thought that I had parents who had money that taught me how to invest money instead of hoarding it.
Right.
And that's, you know what I mean? That's like, right. So to a degree, it's kind of like, wow.
Right. So for all these times, I'm like, why do they think I'm spoon-fed? Do they think I'm just some spoiled brat? Do I just walk around like I'm spoiled? Like, I mean, like, like, right. I've taken it all this time and, like, internalized it as me. Like, what am I doing that makes them think that I am just, like, handed down my businesses and I was just given and I was in a perfect, it was, I is everything that I was saying.
Which is, that part of you is your work ethic person, because you did put a lot of work into things. And so when the work ethic part of you hears that, yeah, you are offended. Mm-hmm. But the money mindset of you is like, yeah, girl. Yeah, you got it. They think you are loaded.
Right.
And they think you've been loaded. And they think your generations have been loaded.
Right.
But what they don't know is your generations to come will be the ones that will have the wealth that is handed down.
Right.
Because it wasn't given to you. You made the switch.
Right. And in reality today, whenever it hit me and I was like, you know what? And I called you and I was like, you know what? Like,
you didn't just call me. You interrupted my lunch. This chicken fried steak, folks. Like, I'm an Okie. Gotta have my gravy and my chicken fried steak. But anyways, you called me.
Yeah, so I had sat there and I had processed, like, what is it that really gets me so irritated about this? Which is, to be honest with you, this is the point where I am from my current mentor that, like, that I pay for and invest in to grow myself.
Yep.
She is all about encouraging you to stop and really look at, well, wait a minute, this is interesting. And, like, look at why you're reacting.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, wait a minute. Like, this is interesting. Why is this pattern? Like, why does this get me so frustrated? And I initially came up with all of the reasons, what that we just discussed. And then I was like, I am sitting here offended and getting offended because of I. And really, it really isn't about me at all. They're looking at a point in time in my life right now, or they're looking at who they think that they know right now, today, and they are making a judgment and assessment. And that opinion, that judgment and assessment that they're making is their opinion based off of the reality that they think they see with the knowledge that they have and in the place that they are able to comprehend and understand. And so there really is no need to be offended.
Yeah.
Because it really is nothing about I. It really is everything about whatever place that they're in and however they're seeing whatever they're seeing. And they have every right to that. And so if they look at me and they think that I am handed down businesses and spoon-fed, and I come from, like, perfect, like, family with, no problems in life, then that actually has nothing to do with me. Because my actual reality is none of that. It's none of that. And so, for me, my truth and my reality is what I know it is. Which is what got me to where I am, and is going to be what gets me on to where I'm going. And their truth and their reality, they can have it. And that's fine. If they want to think that I'm spoon-fed or that I was, the master blessing of it all, then that's fine. That's fine. They can do that. But I know that it was our hard work, and I know that it was our knowledge, our learning, our willingness to learn.
I mean, the investing.
Yeah.
Time. I mean, we invested a lot of things.
Right.
We invested time. We invested. I mean, we put money down. I mean, you want good coaches, you got to pay for them.
Right.
Like, and as we've moved up with our coaches, like, we pay higher amounts as we go up because as you level up, you got to. That's just the way. That's the way it goes.
Right.
And it really enriches who you are as a business owner, because when you're willing, like you had mentioned earlier, you invested in yourself. I think sometimes we get caught up in like, I want the fanciest this, so I'm going to pay for these things and these tools and these strategies. But if you are weak on your own inner self and what you desire and what you want,
right.
I mean, paying for all those fancy things isn't going to do anything.
No. What's going to happen is you're going to sit around and you're going to get caught up in being offended about somebody thinking that you were given a silver spoon or handed something easy, and you were going to feel like you need to tell them your whole backstory of how it was actually not that way. Instead, when you start working on at a higher level of you and working on you and who you are and your confidence, then that's when you start realizing that the investment that you're making into you and what you're capable of and who you are pays off.
And there's no need to prove to others. No,
you're not going to spend time sitting around calling your husband and interrupting his lunch because you're offended.
My chicken fried steak and pecan pie, folks.
And just to be exact, I called you back and interrupted your lunch once I had come to the actual realization and conclusion that it actually has nothing to do with me.
Right.
And all this time, I have been meeting them at their level and getting offended at that point of wherever they are and at whatever they're seeing, instead of stopping and reminding myself, it actually doesn't matter. That is their truth, and they can take that with them, because my truth is I work hard. I've brought myself to where I am. I've taught myself what I know. I do the work. I show up. In changing the lives for my kids, and all of my truths I'm taking with me. And I'm not going to go meet them because their truth of me being silver spoon fed is not reality.
Right.
And so I need to move on.
Well, and if you have to come down, you'll end up having to go back up. And so now you're going to have to rework through things.
That's right.
And now you're doing double, triple the work. And honey, you don't get paid triple when you have to go through it triple.
Right. So my current investment in coaching and mentoring has brought me to this point today where I called you and interrupted you in your lunch to let you know what my revelation was.
Right. Well, I'm so used to being interrupted anyways. So I go on these business ventures, like hours drive, and I'm like, I don't even listen to the radio. I just wait for the phone to ring, because Whitney gets these ideas and has something to ask, something to say. Sometimes I'm kind of like, just get an RV and let's just go on these business ventures together, put the kids in, and let's just have a good old time.
So the main takeaway that we wanted to give with this podcast today is sharing that you're not alone if you didn't come from a picture-perfect, spoon-fed childhood and situation. You are not alone if you are in completely uncharted territory, hearing words like ROI and SEO, profit loss, all these things that you did not grow up hearing that sound like a foreign vocabulary. You're not alone doing all the work, figuring out what that is, and growing your business or your passion or whatever, that you're doing. And you're not alone whenever it feels like it's super hard and that people just don't understand and that they're just misjudging what you do or what you don't do or who you are, because that happens to us all. We have all been there. And so our hope is that in sharing this today, that it can give you some peace and some reassurance that if you just keep on doing your work in your way with your truth and the story that you know is yours, and you leave other people's stories with them and you don't pick it up to carry it, then you're going to go far.
Very good. I have nothing to add. It was so good. So I've enjoyed this podcast as much as you have. Whitney, I think you're amazing. I really appreciate you sharing, all your feelings out here and everything. I know you definitely help someone out a lot. So if this helped you today, I'm sure it'll help a friend. So make sure you share. And of course, we'll see you again next week.
Thank you so much for listening. We know that we all get busy trying to do life, and our hope is that we can find ways to implement time and space to create a life we love living every day on our terms, right in the middle of all the messes of life.
We hope that you've been inspired and our conversation has helped you in some way, and it would be so amazing if you shared this conversation with somebody that you think would really benefit from hearing it. You can text someone the link, or you can share it via email or on your social media pages. And please, we would love for you to leave us a review on whatever platform you are listening on, because it helps us so much. The more reviews we have, the more people that will find our show, and our ultimate goal is for everyone to feel inspired, to find ways to create their own success right in the middle of all the mess. And no, they are not alone in doing so.
And finally, we'd love for you to join our weekly email list so that we can connect on a deeper level and you can always be in the know of our new release events and opportunities.